The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
Another episode of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast going to the first state, the great state of Delaware, as this show talks about news, reviews, previews, and interviews in the world of wrestling. And part of those previews we're talking today is the 25th annual Beast of the East, December 16th and 17th in Newark, Delaware. Not Newark, Newark, Delaware, on the campus of the University of Delaware. Joining us on the program today, Steve Lex, the current tournament director of the Beast of the East, and Vic Leonard, unearthing Vic Leonard from the blast of the past, one of the tournament founders and members of the DWA, past tournament director himself. First of all, gentlemen, welcome to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be here, Twain.
All right, let's see. See, that's how long Vic and I have known each other. He throws the nickname out there right off the bat. But before we get into Vic and I's history in terms of how many times we've spent talking wrestling at TGI Fridays, Steve, as a tournament director now going on your fifth year, going into the 25th, this one's special, 25 years. How little sleep do you get these days?
Vic and I were just talking about that. I said, I'm sitting here with all my notes, and I missed something. I said, I don't have the time to be as prepared as I like to be. I'm not getting much sleep these days, but it's well worth it. Looking forward. Friday, I get to go on vacation. I got a whole task team that's going to. When Friday hits, they hit the mats. They do everything they need to do to get this thing rolling, and I sit back and kind of then watch. But from January to December 15th, it's me.
And speaking of December 15th, the college duel going to be taking place right there at the Bob Carpenter Center, December 15th. Ohio State and Princeton. Ohio State kind of trying to jump in on all these big tournaments. They had a duel right before the Ironman last week. Now they're trying to jump in with a duel right before the Beast.
It's great to have them. They number one ranked in the country now by Intermat. We're glad to have them, and Princeton's been a friend to us for the Beast for many years. They've come down with their coaches, been supporting it, so it's glad to have those two teams.
Of course, not the first time the colleges have made the appearance. There was a short time there, and Vic can probably talk about this a little bit later on the program, that the Beast did have a college component to it the day before, and as it brought some teams in to compete in a one-day tournament, and then we kicked things off with the high school portion, but the Beast of these, Vic, let's turn back to you. This thing started at St. Mark's 25 years ago. When this thing kicked off as then the Delaware Mid-Atlantic Classic, did you ever think it would be the 100-team, two-day grind that it is today?
No, I really didn't. But I'm so happy it is. And back then it was just trying to get our kids recognized in Delaware is what it was all about. You know, I travel out and referee in Pennsylvania and other states, and had very little respect for our guys. So I decided to get a regional tournament together at the time, the best from the 4 states, and we happened to get the state champs from 3 of those states, and we had 11 teams to begin with, our first Mid-Atlantic Classic. But it was still a classic, so I think we've earned our stripes now, and our kids are being recognized in national rankings and so forth. So we did our job, and I'm just so happy we're still around and helping so many people in the sport.
Well, even you said it was little, but you look at some of those early teams. You know, Blair Academy was in here. Brick was a powerhouse at the time. Mount St. Joe's has always had a really good program in Maryland, and of course the legacy of St. Mark's in Delaware, and even DeMath at the national preps. You got really good teams there in that first one, and that kind of laid the groundwork.
That's true. And luckily, Steve Bassinelli, who was the coach at St. Mark's, was friends with Jeff Buxton at Blair, and they kind of helped get it together. And once they found out what the competition was like, they kept coming back, which is nice. And so Blair came, and then in the 4th annual, we finally got the Pennsylvania teams to come down, and they didn't do so well, so that prompted other Pennsylvania teams to come down, then it just took off from there.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I think the first year I attended would have been the 99-2000 season. Some guy named Frank Lapoli trotted me up there, and then I stuck around for a while. And when this thing goes to the University of Delaware, when it comes to the Bob Carpenter Center, and it becomes just, for lack of a better term, a zoo, in terms of just if you lose early, you're in for a long weekend. I mean, how much did the Bob Carpenter Center and moving it to the University of Delaware really elevate the event?
Oh my gosh, it opened up a lot more mats, mat space, of course, more teams. The more competitive teams came in, and talk about coming back. I remember the 8th annual, I had one guy who got beat the first round. He got beat by John Trench in overtime, the first round, and he came all the way back, won 9 straight matches to get third. So that was an undertaking there. So Nate Wagner was his name. But yeah, the university, they've worked with us over the years, and the state legislators gave us some funding and really made it happen for us. And we give now a lot of scholarships, and Steve will go into that a little later. But yeah, moving into the Bob was definitely a step up for us, no doubt about it.
You mentioned the scholarship portion of it. This is where the Delaware Wrestling Alliance, which has kind of been a driving force behind this for a number of years. You've even brought the All-Star Classic to that building in that facility. And explain a little bit, I guess both of you can jump in on what the Delaware Wrestling Alliance is and what its mission and what it's been doing over the years, especially with this tournament.
Well, it all started with scholarships. We want to have scholarships for our wrestlers, not only just for wrestling, but their academics and their community service. And to date, we've given,
$874,000 in scholarships to date.
We're looking to get to that $1 million mark soon for our scholarship fund. And it just helped a lot of kids over the years, and that's what it's all about. We got our kids recognized, and then we reward them at our banquet every year with college scholarships. So it's a win-win all around for everybody.
Now, Steve, as you worked into this role as a tournament director, first of all, I mean, usually when somebody says, hey, does anybody want to be a tournament director, some people are usually willing. I think with a tournament like this, it's like there might be some reluctance to be like, okay, I've seen my friends fall off the wayside on this one.
Vic did the first 10 years. Bob Shaw did the second 10 years. And I think I missed the meeting when Bob said he was stepping down. I think I missed that meeting, and I think I got elected, and I got an email the next day saying, Steve, by the way, you're tournament director. Now, again, following Bob's footsteps, he's a detail-oriented individual, and I just followed suit with what he did. So it made it very simple. A lot of the volunteers, as I mentioned earlier, were in place. The IT individuals, the volunteers for the setup of the mats, that's huge. The table workers. Again, it takes all those individuals. We have over 200 people that will volunteer this weekend, and it's up to it. They are key, and to have that kind of team, it makes it a lot easier for an individual. I know when Vic will tell you when he first started this thing out, I think it was him, Ed Janvier, and John Brancancia working out of his basement, and it was the three of them rolling mats out till 2 o'clock in the morning the night before. So we've come a long way in the volunteer way of things. So. It is a long day. It's a long weekend, but it's a lot of fun.
When it comes to teams wanting to get in this thing, obviously you've got to there's got to be a limit on the number of participants because you can't just have 1,000 entry high school tournament. That would just be wacky. But when a team wants to get into the Beast of the East these days, how do they go about doing it, and how do you guys go about approving the process, whether it be a full or a partial team?
Believe it or not, January 15th we open up our application process. We take applications up until April 1st. We then, April 1st to April 30th, we have a selection committee which will select all the teams, and we'll send out contracts in May and June. Believe it or not, I'm getting calls. I've gotten calls probably every single day for the last month and a half with single entries or two guys trying to get in. We always try to get the top-notch wrestlers in if there's state champions out there, no matter what state you're at, or if you're an All-American in a state, we try to get you to the Beast. So this past week, I think I've taken 3 teams, only wanting 1 wrestlers, but three teams. So it doesn't ever stop. So that's kind of our process. But we do the majority of the selection by April 30th.
Yeah, notice one of those teams, my alma mater, making another return to the tournament, Pocosin, Virginia, which has had a champ, and actually Vic. One of those guys that lost the first round and came back and took third was also a Pocosin guy too. So, it's a little. I got a little bit of a history with the tournament as well.
Yes, you do, buddy. You're a big part of it.
Now,
Some good times there, brother.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of late nights at TGA Fridays. Now, 118 teams as of the website, which you can find information at on beastwrestling.com. And when you're looking at fulls and partials, what type of situation? I mean, a lot of people want to get in. They may have one kid that wants to get in, and you've got this application process. But when there's a school that doesn't have the history and they don't really have a whole lot of legacy, and maybe it's a brand new school that has a standout kid that's really kind of trying to break into his own and hasn't gone to Fargo, how do you make those discussions that say, all right, we really, really need to get this type of kid in? I mean, is it an opportunity? How do you look at that opportunity within the selection committee?
As I mentioned, so we'll let's say over the summer, kids are wrestling over the summer and they do well, whether it's Fargo or whatever it might be. And if they email us at the end of the year and say, hey, my kid placed All-American at Fargo, again, we can't take the whole team, but at that point, we will entertain the individuals. So it comes down to an individual basis at that point. And if the individual did certain things above and beyond over the summer, then we want to give that kid an opportunity to be here. So more times than not, we will take them.
Now, Vic, going back to the early days when New Jersey's high school season starts later than most of the rest of the country, so this is usually the first weekend that a lot of these teams really get a chance to compete. And some people have looked at that as a benefit, saying that they're fresh, and other people have looked at it going, well, this is their first tournament of the year. This is one of the larger tournaments that brings together New Jersey and Pennsylvania to kick things off, as well as the other teams from around the country. Having it this date, how key has that been to the success of the event historically?
I think it's been great for us. I don't know how Jersey feels about it, but as a coach, I don't know if I'd want the Beast my first event, but these guys come prepared, and they've done really well at the Beast. Steve can tell some of the guys been there. Who were some of our four-timers?
Nick Soriano out of Bergen Catholic was our last four-time. We've only had two four-time Beast champions, and that was Mark Gray and Nick Soriano.
Yeah, and I think following Ironman, this is perfect. They can test their skills. A lot of teams go from Ironman to us, and then see how we compare. But I think we're the best spot there is for a tournament, to be honest with you.
And back in the day, there's always the battles about, what's the better tournament? What's the better tournament? Well, they're two different types of tournaments these days. They've evolved. I don't think there's a need to say that one's better than the other. Matter of fact, there's some years that the Ironman entries were and their performers were better, and then some years the Beast has taken that title, just looking at a statistical standpoint. But how have you guys had to go throughout the years of balancing, okay, well, we'd like you back. Okay, you're going somewhere else this year. Well, you're welcome to come back anytime.
We traditionally like to welcome them back. We don't ever hold somebody has a commitment somewhere else. If they're a quality team, they've been good to us, we'll be good to them. So we feel it's a partnership. And we understand that there's other tournaments out there that they might have obligations to, so we don't hold them against them.
Or that are some teams just they're not they may have a lot of freshmen sophomores, or they graduate a lot, and they're not those kids may not be ready to spend a long weekend in the stands watching because they might go 0-2.
That's exactly right. We'll get those emails. They'll say, Coach, we'd like to come back this year, but my team's young. Maybe next year or the year after, when they're juniors and seniors, we welcome them back, no problem. We want them back because by that time they're probably nationally ranked or state champions in their states. We definitely want them back. Yeah,
we have two teams that have been all 25, and Steve can talk about that, but we're going to recognize them on Sunday.
So we have Blair Academy, which has been all 25, and they've won the Beast an unprecedented 21 times. And then we have Sussex Central, a Delaware school that's been there all 25 years. So we're going to recognize them before the finals.
Yeah, I figured it had to be at least one Delaware school in there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Vic, we've talked about the role and the grind of this thing, and Steve talked about the support staff and the volunteers, and the early going, as Steve also alluded to, that it's Vic Bronk and Bob Shaw, and then Ed Janvier, and just the small core, and then it grew and grew and grew over the years. How crucial is it are people like the sponsors? Silvestri Mushrooms has sponsored this thing. You've had Janvier, Ed and his jewelry companies have sponsored this thing over the years. What do those people mean to this tournament?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, some of the sponsors we've had, like Silvestri Mushroom, Donna Silvestri, our executive director of the DWA, she has been phenomenal. She is the heart and soul of the whole tournament. and she's been there for everybody. Everybody knows Donna when they come into the tournament, and not only financially, but she is the heart and soul. I mean,
she's the face of the Delaware Wrestling Alliance.
Absolutely, she sure is. And
then this year we have Donna was not able to sponsor this year, so Dr. Michael Axe stepped up along with partnership with ATI, and they're our title sponsor. And Dr. Axe is another one that's been there all 25 years, supporting the medical staff of the Beast.
He was there from the beginning. And our new partners this year, NWCA, of course, we're excited about that also. With them coming on board, and they're bringing a lot to the table, help us out, and getting the word out, trying to promote our sport all over the place. And so we're happy that we have who we have, especially NWCA, Mike Moyer and the NWCA.
And as we look at this year's squad, this year's team, Steve, who are you most excited to see? What teams are you really trying to push people to say, hey, you need to come to the Beast and check these guys out?
I tell you, we have Lake Island Prep coming up this year. It's the first time they've entered here. They've gone to national tournaments the past couple of years, started getting out there, and we're excited to have them. They have a loaded squad. They're ranked number 8 in the country. Obviously Blair, the talent they have every single year. How can you not get excited to see Blair? Bergen Catholic is top-notch. Malvern Prep. But Lake Island Prep probably is the one that I'm most excited to see. And if everybody saw that match with Joey Sylvia the other day, I think there's going to be some barn burners of a match. His weight class this year is probably the best at the Beast. I mean, we have 9 top-ranked wrestlers in that weight class right now, 10 state champions. So it's going to be a dogfight.
Yeah, and that brings into the next point, because in the past I had helped Adrian Stewart and some other people with some seedings back when I was doing national rankings. And
you're welcome to come out Thursday night and help us out.
I want nothing to do with that ever again. But that draws the point. When you get a tournament that's so deep, what type of seeding criteria do you guys have to make sure that you're making sure that some states that, I remember one year that we instituted, like, well, he was a state champ. That was 1A North Carolina, not quite the same as a New Jersey state champ. So what have you guys done over the years and have evolved with the seeding process?
Well, again, track wrestling's program, everybody enters everything in the track, and that gives you a guideline. That's not an end-all. It's just a guideline. We use that guideline, not strict by it. One thing we are, and sometimes it's to a fault, is we're loyal to our Beast champions. So if we have a previous Beast champion that's coming back, we're loyal to them. And no matter what they've done over the last year, they get top recognition. That doesn't mean they get the number 1 spot, but they get very serious consideration for being at the top of the list. And then we go from there. Then we try to, you look at their national rankings, you look at their national credentials. Again, we weigh in their state championships. We weigh in national prep championships. Fargo, we've taken into consideration Super 32. It's a number 1 out of season tournament, so we do take that into consideration. So we try to look at all those factors and try to really, you want to get the kids in the right seed so that it pans out. You have your top 4 kids in the semis and your top 2 kids in the finals. That's our goal. We're not always successful, but we're very close.
Well, of course, the nature of high school athletics, any given day. I mean, Jordan Burroughs speaks, I would say, not so highly about his performance at the Beast, because that was one of the events where I saw him and he DNP'd, and he still hates talking about that. And, he was worried about it.
But he does talk about it, Jason. He actually uses that as a very motivational, in his motivational speeches. He uses the Beast as here's a national tournament. He never placed that. But look what he did at NCAAs. Look what he did at Olympics. So, he says it's not, you never know.
Yeah, I'm not even going to, he lost to, I believe it was Andrew Van Dyke from Ocean Township in the Consolations. That's what put him out. And I remember that one because he tells the story that's, okay, they were there to see his friend Vince Jones there in Nebraska, and all these college coaches, which leads to my next point. The way you guys treat the college coaches at tournaments I've been through over the years, second to none, really. You've got that big overlooked box that during football season overlooks the football games, and during basketball season it overlooks the basketball court, but you guys use it as a hospitality room, coaches' hospitality. Vic, when this all started, I mean, when college coaches started showing up in droves, was that just a logical place to say, hey, let's put them up there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what better spot could they have there? They got the food and talked to other coaches and seeing everything ringside. from up top, and I know you've been up there, and you know the view, and it's a perfect spot to be at the Bob. You see all the bats, and you can tell which ones are with your program. You can tell which match is which. So it's great for recruiting for all these guys, and we do treat them well, and they appreciate it.
And Vic, when you look at when this thing evolved and grew over the years, at what point did you say, "Man, this is the thing here. We got college coaches showing up. We've got monster teams showing up"? I mean, at what point did you think that we've arrived?
Well, I think once the Pennsylvania team started coming down, because I had a lot of respect for Pennsylvania wrestling, as most people do, and once they got a taste of it, and we started turning Pennsylvania teams down, I think we made it at that point where we got the best coming down, Northampton, Nazareth, and teams like that that just came down. Then the Pittsburgh teams came in, and so I think once Pennsylvania came, and then Ohio, St. Ed's came that one year, and they beat Blair for one of the few times that Blair got beat. Then it really opened up the Ohio teams. So Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Jersey, and I mean, we were getting the best of the best, and it was a good feeling. We made that about the 5th annual when we got to the Bob. That was a good tournament.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. See, yeah, you bring up that St. Ed's team, and that was a little traumatic for me because a little side note here, because I come up, I'm 19 years old, I'm in college at Old Dominion, and I come up with Frank Lapoli, and then I get this call at the head table. Hey, Jay, can you go pick up St. Ed's at the airport? I'm like, so.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So I'm Frank Jane will let me know about this story every time I see him. So I'm 19 now. I'm 38 to give you some relevance. I'm 38 years old now, but I was 19, and I was like, okay, I'd never been to Delaware before. I'm like, okay, where's the airport? I'm figuring it's 10, 15 minutes down the street. Baltimore. Okay,
yeah.
I'd never been to Baltimore's airport before. So St. Ed's is delayed with weather, and I had some habits when I was younger. One of those, actually, I've quit dipping for well over a year now, and I was, at Wrestler's Choose. So I'm sitting there. We finally get St. Ed's picked up, and John Heffernan is sitting next to me, and I'm just chatting. They're mad. They've had to de-ice in Cleveland. They have had the trip from hell already, and for a Catholic school, that's saying something. And they're sitting there, and I'm chatting at Mark Moses in the back. This is a monster team that St. Ed's has, and I'm just I'm playing music. I get lost. On one of the ways out of the airport, I take the wrong turn. There was before GPS. Then I end up making a U-turn, and in a Catholic church, I end up turfing the grass. That's great. Let's just turf a Catholic church with St. Ed's in the car. That's even better. Get lost. We finally get there, and then Heffernan is just screwing with me the entire time. And it was just, it was not a good trip. I got him lost 3 different times. We finally get there. It's like 2 hours after. It's 2 hours after I picked them up, and it should have been like 5 hours after they got there. And to this day, Frank Jane, Greg Urbis, and Heffernan, I think, has talked to me once since then. But it was just one of those things that the day I got St. Ed's lost coming to the Beast, and that was the last time I ever picked anybody up from the airport at the Beast.
Well, you must have made them mad because they kicked some butt at the tournament. That's for sure.
Well, that was a good team. And that year, that was the crazy year because Ryan Bertine, this was the moment that I'm like, I really had my eyes open to big-time high school wrestling. And we've had great teams come into the Virginia Duels. But to see Ryan Bertine, who I'd really not heard of, because I really wasn't covering a whole lot national, he goes through Lay Black and Mike Pirazzolla back-to-back to win the Beast. Right. I'm like, who is this guy?
Right. Yeah, Bertine was something else. And of course, he went on to be NCAA champion, and we were hoping to get some of those guys back this year who went on to be NCAA champions from the Beast. So we have 5 of those guys coming back to see us on Sunday.
And one thing, Steve, that kind of complicates things in some cases is some states don't allow competition on Sundays. How has the Beast helped teams that have this issue and they talk to their high school state associations about allowing Sunday competition?
It's tough. Some schools, Florida's kind of giving their schools a waiver. New York's kind of waiving it, but there's other states that don't. No matter if you talk to them, it doesn't matter. They're just not going to waive that. So Colorado is it, for instance, we were going to have public Pueblo come from Colorado, and they just weren't able to get approved on Sunday. So it's a challenge with some of these schools. They want to be here, but we can't make it Friday and Saturday. We have Saturday and Sunday with the university. and we're locked into that. So it's a challenge, but some states waive it and some states don't.
Yep, I try to get the California teams this year, and
same thing, right?
Buchanan and Clovis, and they said, yeah, they'd love to come, and then they said, oh, we can't wrestle on Sunday. So I asked them how we could change. They said, no, that's kind of in stone. Sunday is sacred, so they can't wrestle on Sunday, or they're ready to come out. But that would be nice to have the California teams back again.
One thing, Vic, is there's been a lot of stories being posted up this week on Track Wrestling. Andy Hamill to talk about some of the great matchups over time. I know that one that always rings out to me is Coleman Scott, and it's not Coleman Scott Troy Nickerson, it's Coleman Scott Mike Rowe. And when Coleman got 2-2 in the last 4 seconds to win the freaking match, one of the greatest. That's one of those things that Coleman Scott scores in short time. That's no problem. What are some of your favorite memories in matches that you've seen over the last 25 years?
Well, CP Slater getting beat by one of your Virginia boys.
Yeah, Michael
Remember
Martin.
Yeah.
And Mike likes to say he's 133 in me or something like that was his all-time record. So
he lost one, and that was at the Beast, and that's saying something for somebody like C.P. Slater. But he came back, and I think he beat the boy from Clovis the year after that, Terapelli, in the finals, if I recall correctly.
Sounds about right. Now, Steve, you've been the tournament director just the last 5 years, but you've been around the tournament for quite longer than that. What are some of your favorite matches?
Well, I'm going to tell you, it's funny, when you asked Vic that, I started thinking, and it is within the last 5 years, it was Mark Gray and Randy Cruz. Randy Cruz beat Mark Gray out at Ironman, and Mark Gray was coming into the Beast looking for it to be a 4-time Beast champ. They both made it to the finals, and Mark Gray pulled out a 4-3 win with a torn-up ankle. So, I mean, that was a gutsy match, and and again, our first time 4-time Beast champ. So that's the most memorable one that I can remember. Although there's been great ones over the years. So.
Mm-hmm. And another, actually, it's a loss that actually comes to mind with the Gray family, and as Mike Gray was sitting there wrestling one year, he gets upset by Mike Robinson from Lewistown, Pennsylvania, and it was like, who is this guy? He showed up on the radar, and I just remember, Mike Gray hadn't spent very much time in consolation matches in his entire career at that point. I think at that point was one of his either one or two losses. He didn't have very many in his high school career, and that was one of them. And I just remember him slapping his hands like, yeah, let's go for a third place match. He was amped for that. It wasn't like I'm an elite guy that lost and I'm just going to bag it because I lost. He actually just said, nope, that's it. He got up there and, went out there and went after it. So it's just one of those things to see the athletes that respect the event so much like that too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, special things that are coming up here. This event will be streamed on Track Wrestling, on TrackCast this year. Track's been doing some software for a number of years, and you guys have always been kind of evolving with the software, and Kreider PC tournaments came in for a long time and did the brackets. And Vic, from tournament organization situations, sometimes we even had years where the brackets didn't work, and I was there that year too, and we've had all sorts of funky stuff. So you're bringing Track Wrestling in this year, and Steve, I'm going to pitch to you on that relationship and how that's been so far.
Track's been great. The software program they have is so user-friendly. Communicating everything to the coaches inputting all their own information. Again, it's just such an easy software to utilize and makes the weekend go great. Unless, Jason, I don't know if you heard last year, but the software works great until the power goes out. Last year, Sunday morning, 10:30, we're in the midst of our consolation finals, getting ready for the semifinals, which start at 11. And somebody hits a transformer in Newark, Delaware, and the power goes out in the whole city. So we had to jump through. We went old school. We went back to flip charts and handbouts for about an hour until the power came back on. But Track's been great, and this year we're great to have them as a partner with the TrackCast and integrate with their Track program. So
fan friendly.
Yeah, I think it's fan friendly. So it's going to be a great event, and we're glad that it'll be streamed out to those who can't make it.
Now, of course, covering this thing can kind of be a bear, even with the advances in technology. Still a pretty good core of local sports writers and writers from around the country that come in, and there's media applications on the site. And when it comes to the relevance of the Beast of the East, Steve, what are you trying to do as the tournament director to continue to make sure that the Beast is argued as one of the 1, 2, 3 best tournaments in the country?
The number one thing is you got to get the top teams and the top talent there in order to be considered number one. And the second thing is to try to get all the information out to across the country, and that's using Facebook and Twitter these days. That message is a lot easier to get out than it was many years ago. You know, in the Vic years, he didn't have that. So, and then again, the writers, yourself and Intermat and Flo, they've all been good to us, getting the message out and pushing the sport of wrestling. So
taking care of the coaches too.
Yep, and taking care of the coaches.
So I remember that first year. I still keep going back to that first year. That was kind of a landmark event for me because I get St. Ed's lost. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway, I see Ryan Bertine and Vic that year. It was Vic was in a state of delirium. Like it was like, Vic, you okay? You were just a zombie by that point. We had all sorts of issues. And what is one thing you've learned over the years that you were able to tell Bob after you and then Steve after you about maintaining proper sleep and making sure this thing doesn't just kill you?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't learn a lesson from any of that.
And he didn't teach the rest of us anything.
No, it just is what it is, and you just can't get any sleep. There's just so many things you got to coordinate and keep everybody happy and try to anyhow. And at the same time, recruiting teams and getting matches and coordinating this and that. And but luckily, we have the Del Wrestling Alliance now that we have the long arms out there, Tommy Abbott and so forth, and running things, getting the match set up, and security. So everybody knows their job now, so it makes it a lot easier on tournament director, but still we don't get any sleep. There's always something that comes up.
And we are very fortunate with the University of Delaware and their staff and how they treat us, and they go above and beyond to do whatever we need to have done. So they've been great with us too.
Yes, they have.
Now, one thing that the NWCA awarded the Delaware Wrestling Alliance a couple years ago with the Dan Gable American Eats Wrestling Award, and that was a collective effort through the DWA, and even the last time I'd see some of you guys would be at the NCAA championships, and you guys are all together. You know, it's Bob, it's Tom, it's Ed, it's Vic, it's the crew there, and you guys have been friends in wrestling and competing against, coaching against one another. Your kids have been wrestling and such. What's it mean to have that group be recognized with such an award?
I thought it was great. It was an honor to be awarded by the man, Dan Gable. And it was a joint effort, as you say. We work as a team, and we always like to go to NCAAs together and watch our former Beast champions go out there. We've had 27 of them go on to be NCAA champions. So, it is a team effort, and we all get along well. We all have our pros and cons, and we complement each other. That's what makes it a great relationship.
Steve, what have you learned from this crew over the years?
I tell you, it's been a great experience for me, and learning off the backs of Vic Leonard and Bob Shaw, watching them do what they did, stepping in, doing what I do, and again, I'm on the board of the Delaware Wrestling Alliance now, also with these guys, have been for 7 or 8 years now, and what we do for Delaware Wrestling, it's heartwarming. I mean, we spend all our money on supporting the wrestling at all levels in Delaware, from the kindergarten to the college at UAD. So to see our money go to support them and to put some kids who would never get an opportunity to maybe go out to Iowa or Fargo or Florida at the Disney duels or on some of these trips, to watch those guys go and to create the friendships that they create. I mean, wrestling creates friendships as it is, but it's very touching.
Vic, there's one thing about the Beast that I just know that is a grind from a coach's standpoint or an athlete's standpoint. You lose early. You really don't want to lose early. What are some advices to those coaches and kids to be like, hey, if you're going to be a high seed, you don't make it difficult on yourself. Take one match at a time.
That's right. Team championships are run through the Wrestlebacks, as Blair has shown over the years. And sometimes they have a lot of champions, sometimes they don't, but they do have a lot of placers. So you're still in it with the team. So you got to pump these guys up and let them know that it's still a team effort out there, and do the best you can. Even though you're wrestling some of the best in the nation, you learn from that experience. And if they don't learn from it, then maybe they shouldn't be there. But win or lose, you learn things at the Beast.
Again, 25th Annual Beast of the East. Find out the info at beastwrestling.com. That's coming at you December 16th and 17th. Ohio State and Princeton the night before at 8 p.m. at the Bob. Information about tickets, streaming from Track Wrestling. all available at beastwrestling.com. Final words from Steve and then Vic, and we can close this puppy out.
Just one final word is that before the Ohio State and Princeton match on Friday night, we're bringing in two nationally ranked women's teams from Kentucky to wrestle freestyle preliminary match out there. So we're incorporating a little diverse in the program. So
yep, number 2 Campbellsville is going to take on number 4 University of Cumberland, and they have some great women coming here, and hopefully University of Delaware take a look and maybe think about the varsity program again. Who knows?
Actually, you know what? Now that you bring that up, that was on my list of things to talk about because even when the college tournament was a thing for a couple years, Delaware's club team competed in it, and there was the talk about trying to get University of Delaware had wrestling. There was that the meetings with the ADs and the administration last year that made some headlines. A feasibility study, I believe, that was started by one of the Congress people in Delaware, and now with Presbyterian
Senator Nicole Ford, yeah.
And now saying the Presbyterians going, hey, we're starting men's and women's wrestling at Division I level. How closely are you guys watching what's going to go on in South Carolina with Presbyterian and be able to say, hey, women's wrestling, put that on the tack this on. We got to make sure we get both of them here in Delaware.
You got it, buddy. You got it. We're definitely looking at that.
Yeah, we're gonna revisit. We're gonna revisit. And Delaware made a comment last year that they would not bring men's back without women's. So that's why we're bringing the women's match in this year to show the athletic director there what it's all about, and so she can get a little glimpse of female wrestling.
That and the fact that they're pushing towards emerging sports status, and of course now we've got a Division I school taking the leap and becoming the first one to do it. But exciting times there. I remember just the excitement about possibly trying to bring UD wrestling back, and it seems like with the women's component that might be another way to make that happen. So Steve and Mr. Leonard, it's been great talking and reminiscing. One of these days I'll get back there. One of these days I will get back to the Beast.
Well, you're welcome back anytime, Jason.
We need you, buddy. We need you.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to MattTalkOnline.com/GetShortTime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or listen on your favorite podcatcher at MattTalkOnline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.